Hello everyone, welcome to the Comms Corner, a new series by React and Share where we check in with inspiring comms professionals at the forefront of the industry. My name is Daisy, I'm part of the marketing team at React and Share, and it is my pleasure to introduce Hayat Rachi, React and Share's CMO, and we have Darren from Comms 2.0 here. Darren is also the owner of Creative Communicators, founder of the UnAwards and organizer of Comms Unplugged. Thank you so much, Darren, for being here and for contributing to our series. We're so excited to have you involved. So I'll be overseeing this session from an admin perspective, but I'll be switching off my camera so that I don't distract from the undoubtedly amazing conversation that is about to happen. Over to you, Hayat.
Thank you so much, Daisy. And yes, welcome to Comms Corner, a React and Share series that we're super excited to have another episode with Darren Caveney, who we're so excited to speak to. Just a quick overview of what React and Share is. We are the only way to measure if your web visitors have found the information that they're looking for. We've built intuitive software that helps comms and digital teams to fill content gaps and increase customer satisfaction through actionable user feedback. We've been used on more than 3.6 million pages across the public and not-for-profit sectors. And that's why I'm so excited to speak to Darren today about specifically public sector comms. So Darren, for anyone who may not know you, can you please tell us a bit about yourself and your unique experience within the comms space?
Hi, that's quite a build-up, isn't it? I feel So, hi, and thank you for the invite to Comms Corner. So it's very exciting, isn't it? Lovely to be with you. So my name's Darren Caveney. I'm the creator of something called Comms 2.0. We were just chatting, weren't we? I've just had this present through the post, which says Comms Dad's coffee mug. So I think in a way, the best way to introduce myself is I seem to have become known as Comms Dad. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. My two children will have a view on that, and it's probably the latter. But yeah, thank you to Josephine Graham for the lovely gift that's just landed. So yeah, my background is 25 years in communications, PR and marketing. Started off in the private sector after I'd done a PR degree up in Leeds with the famous Anne Gregory. And I started off in the private sector. So my first actual work gig was at the Euro 96 football tournament, which was quite a high bar to set really in terms of where to begin a career. I mean, it sounds very glamorous. I was a complete dog's body that kind of did everything, but it's a brilliant experience and I love that. Then I worked kind of consultancy side, utilities, very much in the marketing side. And then I got a marketing job within local government. And that was my first real taste of public sector. And I just loved it. And I loved that thought that you could, sounds cheesy, doesn't it? But you could make a difference. And I think it's true. And I think comms people in the public sector and the not-for-profit sectors, we're in it because on some level, we want to feel like we can make a difference and do good. And so I loved my time. I was a head of comms for 10 years in local government. Did a director of comms role for a couple of years in the NHS. As I say, 10 years ago, set up this thing called Comms 2.0, which I felt at the time there was a gap for a kind of online learning space where we could do this kind of stuff and we could share. And I think those of us in public and not-for-profit sectors, we can share insights and lessons and things that went well and things that went badly. And I think we can do that and we can learn from each other and from the other sectors. But I didn't feel like there was anywhere I could go and do or share that stuff. So, what's that classic quote that, if it doesn't exist, go and create it yourself. So that was 10 years ago this summer. So I'll be celebrating a birthday soon. And then that kind of morphed into the day job because people kept saying, oh, could you come and do this for us? Yeah, this sounds really exciting. And so 6 years ago, I set up my own comms consultancy called Creative Communicators Limited, and that'll be 6 in June. So I'm another birthday, lots of birthdays this year.
That's amazing. It probably makes you 25 now, then I'm guessing? Yeah, okay.
125. The reason why that says Comms Dad is because I'm very elderly and I've been around a long time.
There we go. It makes sense.
I've even got the dad cardigan on today as well. So I'm kind of living the brand, aren't I?
Personal branding on point. Yes, definitely. But yeah, like you've spent your business has been, 10 years, like you've said. And recently I read a report that you had put out, and you had said that, and I quote, the future-proofing investment in digital and a fresh focus on mental health and well-being should be priorities for all organizations. Are these three elements, future-proofing, digital and well-being, the core areas that you see propelling the comms function forward?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's probably more than three, isn't there, in truth? Because us comms and marketing people, we've always got more than three things on the to-do list, haven't we? But I think they're three biggies, certainly. Mental health, I think, is something that's huge. And, and I've been an advocate for that for a long time with my colleagues, Sally and Georgia, as part of the Comms Unplugged crew. Back in 2017, we launched Comms Unplugged, which had a deliberate agenda around mental health and wellbeing. So about 50% of the agenda at a 3-day event is solely dedicated to mental health and wellbeing. So I feel like, say we were trailblazers, but I think we were one of the first out the pack, certainly, to be, we've all talked about it for years, but we've done bugger all with it. So it was like, okay, let's begin to tackle this. How can we help one another? So I think, for me in 2021, after the last 15 months we've just gone through, I think, mental health and wellbeing should be the number one organisational priority for every single business and every single individual and every single team. It won't be, in truth, and that's why, the battle continues. But I think good work has happened, and I think more people have woken up to the importance of it. But yeah, for me, that's the number one priority, because you can have the best tech and the best strategies and the best staff and the biggest budgets in the world, but if your mental health and well-being is off, you can't do great work. And so for me, it's an absolute fundamental. But yeah, so I think future-proofing, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of platforms and tech and resources out there that can help comms people these days. It's in a much better position than it was when I began 25 years ago, when it was kind of, make, do and mend, wasn't it? Now we've got access to free and paid for tools that can give us insights, really valuable insights to help us, begin to future-proof's probably a very grand ambition, isn't it? Because can we ever fully future-proof? Probably not, because who saw COVID coming? But I think it can give us the best shot of success and, learn, history's a great, full of great lessons, isn't it, about what works and what doesn't. So I think that can lead us. But I think, there's an array of tools out there that can help us future-proof and give us the best chance of delivering our best work.
Yeah, and on that point, exactly what you had said in your report, which was around, the free use of social media and paid use of, other tools. So outside of social media, how else can the public sector teams future-proof their strategy?
Yeah, I think one of the biggies for me is platforms come and go, don't they? And when you're as old as I am, you have seen things come and go. And I think back in the day, it was, when I first came in, particularly the public sector, what I heard a lot was, we need a logo, we need a poster, we need a website, then we need a microsite, then we needed a Twitter account, and then we needed a Facebook page, and then we needed a video. And they were all very, very tactical requests, none of which actually looked at the strategy and the research and the insights and the objectives that we were agreeing to deliver. They were kind of very much knee-jerk. And that's still happening 25 years on. And in a sense, we haven't completely done the job of telling the story about why comms is so important and sits at the heart of everything an organisation does, because, we're still getting those knee-jerk kind of requests for tactical things. And sometimes they'll work, but other times they won't. And so for me, it's really important that we're strategic. And as comms people, we kick back. We like to say yes a lot as comms people. I've done it myself. We're doers. We crack on and do things. We deliver a lot. We like to please. I think we're show-offs. I think we like to please. And that's dangerous because, you've worked in plenty of organisations. There are plenty of people in organisations that are the opposite, and they say no a lot. And I think for me, I say this to my kids, say yes more than you say no in life. It will get you to a better place. But we do sometimes have to say no. And I think I think we've got better at saying no and going back to what's the purpose, what are the business benefits, where's the evidence that tells us that that's the best thing to do. And I think, so, you know, we've had to really kind of shoehorn ourselves into a strategic place. You know, we've talked about this as comms and PR professionals, certainly since I've been at university and the 25 years since. We haven't cracked it still, because there are still those people, you must get this, you know, oh, hi, could you just whack this on the website quick, without any kind of thought about, is that strategically the best way to tell our story and to engage with our, you know, whoever our audience is. And I think, and that's actually a good thing, isn't it? Because it keeps us all in work, because the job's never done.
Yeah, that's so true. And I've noticed that anything or any sentence that ends with the word quick takes the longest time, especially when it comes to like content or copywriting or something. And they're like, oh, can you just quickly change that wording? It's like, oh no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's not how it works.
Well, that other classic line, I know you're busy, but.
That's yeah. And oh God, I hate it. I hate it. I don't know how comms people do it. And even some of our clients, and you had mentioned a very good point earlier, actually, in terms of people who work in the not-for-profit or public sector tend to love, you know, they want to change something. They love what they're doing and they want to have a positive impact. And I think that's kind of congruent with being like a yes person, because you feel that level of passion that you constantly want to say yes. So what's a good way of saying no without coming across as, you know, that person who's just a naysayer, no person? What's a good way of doing that?
I think there's a couple of ways, you know, and I'm as guilty as anybody in the past. I've got much better at it. I think, I don't know, does it come with age? I don't know, maybe it has for me at least. It's having the confidence to say no, but understanding why you're saying no. Because, yeah, nobody wants to just be that arms crossed, awkward person in the team. You know, we've all seen and had those, and that's not a good place to be. But I think for me, it's having case study evidence and say, well, we tried that last year. Do you remember when we did X, Y, and Z and A, B, and C didn't happen? And then we flipped it around, didn't we? And then we did something slightly different. And then, so for me, it's about presenting case studies about what's worked well in the past, whether that's benchmarking with other similar organisations, or it's having your own in-house case studies, you know, and reporting back. I mean, it's not the exciting bit of our job, but for me, it's along with, you know, kind of the planning and the objective setting, the evaluation is the most important bit. But if you don't report it back, so what? We've got to tell people what we do. And if we're doing that regularly and we've got the ear of the senior people and the influencers in an organisation, we should be able to have told that story over time, so that we don't keep having to have those awkward no conversations, because, you know, we're on the same page with where comms is working, you know. But if you're not reporting back and you only see your senior management team once a year, you're in a really difficult place there. And I think that's, so for me, it's about, I hate that phrase being at the top table, because I'm not even sure what it means. You don't have to necessarily be a senior person to have influence, but I think we do need to have the ear of the senior people and be able to prove with evidence. Let's strip the opinions out of things. We've all got opinions, haven't we? I've got opinions about all sorts. They're probably not worth a great deal. Let's look at the insights, and let's look at the data, and let's look at what's worked before and what hasn't, and let's go with that. And I think that, and again, that positions us in a more strategic place as well, internally, I think, as well.
And do you see that being a benefit for both, you know, comms teams who are having their budget cut, their resources stripped back, to the other comms teams who are, you know, having their budgets upped and replenished and more people coming on board? Because I've seen it, especially within our clients, that the basis of getting more budget and more kudos and being at that top table, whatever the hell that means, is the fact of, like you said, benchmarking and using measurements and actually proving what you're doing has a effect on whether, you know, whatever objective your organization has. Do you feel that's the same, and what else can they do in order to really like gain the trust and kudos and just even level of appreciation from maybe the stakeholders who might not at the minute?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, for me, the benchmarking's always been really important. I was doing this back in 2010. I remember I was an in-house head of comms in local government, and I had a brilliant leader, and I really liked him. But he did have an obsession with press releases, and kind of the whole organisation. That it wasn't just him. And I got the call that said, "Darren, can you go and see the leader?" And I knew what was coming. It was going to be we haven't sent out enough press releases this month. And I had all the data for all of the councils across the West Midlands in terms of everything, budget, headcount, activity. We were early days of social media then, web activity, a little bit of email marketing. And I had all the stats for press releases. And so we sat down and he said, "Darren, press releases." I said, "What, we haven't sent out enough?" And he went, "Exactly." And I said, "Do you know what, leader? You should sack me for how many press releases we've sent out in the last month." He said, "Really, why?" I said, "Because we've sent out more press releases than any other council in the West Midlands." And I had all the data, and it completely took the opinion out of the conversation, because we're all broadly similar organisations delivering pretty much the same services to a very similar group of people across 2.5 million people in the West Midlands. And so we were able to have that really honest conversation and said, it isn't the answer to everything. Do you know how many people buy the newspaper, by the way, these days? And at the time, it was 3% of our adult population bought the local newspaper. It was tiny. And of course, the stats around, but lots of people look online and take some of those stats with a pinch of salt as well. I mean, I love a stat, I love data, and I do use it, and I'm a bit of an anorak with it, but, my God, take it with a pinch of salt, because there's was it Vic Reeves that came out with the quote that something like 83.29% of statistics are made up? And I love that line, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. So we just had this really informed conversation, and I said to him, "Do you know, we'd be better, we'll still do some press releases. It's not dead. Nothing's dead. Things just evolve. Other platforms have emerged. Let's do some interesting things on social media. Let's do some interesting things with email. Let's still not forget a little bit of print through a letterbox can still work brilliantly. And for me, and going back to one of your earlier questions that I probably didn't answer very well, it's own your own platforms, because, the Facebooks of the world may come and go, and we don't own any of that. We do not own them, and I used to joke, what happens if the Russians took down Facebook overnight? I mean, it sounds an outlandish claim, doesn't it? But not completely unbelievable. How would some organisations communicate with their audiences? Because we put a lot of eggs in certain baskets, don't we? So for me, there is something about really owning your own platforms. And for me, yes, social's a part of it. But for me, your website, your email, Americans call it real estate, don't they? But that real estate is really, really important. You own it and you influence it. And, yes, I suppose the Russians could take that down as well, couldn't they? But, we've got a much bigger say in those platforms and how they behave and how they look and feel. And so, yeah, I think there is something within all of that ramble about owning your own platforms.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. And I feel like the means of more traditional communications, like you said, website and email and things that you own, tend not to have so much love compared, well, this is just from my understanding, what I've seen, as much love as like the shiny object syndrome with, Clubhouse and Facebook and Twitter and, YouTube even. So do you think that websites are still an important tool for public sector organizations to connect and increase engagement with their communities? And what can they be doing if they're currently not investing, or even the organization as a whole doesn't see that as a value prop at the minute, or like a value as a whole?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. I think in truth, there's a couple of things there. I think firstly, I've probably been delivering external training now for teams for, well, it's certainly longer than I've officially been a consultant. So it's about 7 years. In that time, I have delivered social media training for over 100 organisations. I've never once been asked about email marketing. And that's really interesting, isn't it? I always say, let's not forget email, because according to Ofcom, 93% of adults in the UK has an email address. So that doesn't mean we're going to suddenly all engage with all of them. But in terms of reach, it completely top trumps all social media. Probably if you combined it. But it doesn't sound sexy, does it? And I think, again, I'm as guilty as anyone about being a magpie and looking at the shiny things and go, oh, look at that, let's have a go at that. I love that, and I love to innovate. But some of the basics and the building blocks, the fundamentals are so important. Email falls into that category, and so do websites. And, and again, for me, with Comms 2.0, that website, the Comms 2.0 website, has been a lifeline for me. It's helped me create a business. It's helped me set up as a consultant. It's helped me feed and clothe my kids. It's given me so many opportunities for stuff like this. You probably, I don't know, because we've not had the chat, have we? I don't know how you found me or how I found you, but probably a little bit of Twitter or LinkedIn. And then we clicked on the link and had a look back at the website and found out a little bit more about each other. You can't do that without a website. And, so for me with Comms 2.0, I know the top 4 sources of referrals to the website. And I think that's really important. And if I'm being honest, I know more about my audience and my website and my web traffic now as a consultant than I did when I was an in-house director of comms. And so I look back and I think, probably didn't show the website enough love. And I think that's probably still true for some in-house comms people now. And it's probably a bit unfair because, one, they've just had the worst 15 months in history and they've never been busier and they're horribly stretched, and they physically can't do everything. But I think the second thing is and we'll probably talk about this later, but where do websites sit? Who owns them? Who's in charge of websites in the public sector? And that's quite a grey area, and I think it's different in every organisation. But, when I was in comms, I was adamant, no, it sits with the comms team, and I'd have died in a ditch over that. I did have arguments over it. That's ours. Yes, of course, it's a customer services channel as well, and we want to collaborate with colleagues internally, but we're not having IT owning that because it's going to end up terrible. And I'm only speaking about, from personal experience. Other IT teams will be much better, I know. But, that for me was a deal breaker. But where do websites sit? And, chatting to a couple of heads of comms in local government earlier this year, we had this exact conversation about, does it sit in comms? Does it sit in customer? Does it sit in IT? Is it a kind of a myriad of those things? And actually it's a number of people working as a project group. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong absolute answer, but comms has to absolutely own the look and feel of the website and tell the story. And narrative's the buzzword, isn't it? Tell the narrative of the organisation. Your IT team, best will in the world, aren't going to be able to do that, in my experience. Their skills lie elsewhere. I'm not, particularly techie. I'm going to go to IT to get some tech help. So, let's understand our specialisms and let's have the specialists doing the specialist bits. So, sorry, that was a really long answer to a really simple question, wasn't it? But yeah, email, web, and then with social media to help drive the traffic to both. I think the 3 together work really powerfully.
Yeah, completely agree. And amongst our clients, what I found was super interesting was majority of the traffic going to their websites primarily through Google. So people actually, searching and wanting an answer to something and then popping over to their website. Also, I was speaking to an NHS digital person, comms person earlier last week. Everything's a blur. And he was saying how it's very important that their website is upkept because people who are above a certain age and just aren't tech savvy or are not interested in social media, that is the place to go for NHS comms. Like he said, fundamentally, even if we really bolster and invest in our time on social, it's always to move them over to our website so then they can learn more. So yes, I totally agree with the trifecta in that. And how did the conversation go when you were trying to get the website under the comms team? That, you know, how did it go in terms of that? And what can someone do if they are in the comms team currently and they do want more say in terms of the web, but actually it's owned by customer or IT? What can they do to actually, you know, get some ownership?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Well, I did win the argument, and we did keep the website, and I did keep the web team within comms. I'm not sure how I did it, but I did. Probably exerted some influence somewhere. I had photographs of senior people. No, I'm kidding. I think, yeah, I just managed to keep it. You know, for me, it's your number one branded asset that's out there in the world. You know, and that has to sit in the comms and marketing team. To me, it would be insane to go and put it in IT. That's just me. I can kind of see an argument in some organisations that it sits with customer services. You know, I think there's like a Venn diagram of comms and customer services, isn't there? And I think web and email and social media, they kind of sit in the middle a little bit. But comms has to influence that look and feel and the experience, I think. And then pull in the IT expertise for the techie bits that us comms people might not have. You know, and then customer services are the experts at customer service, and we shouldn't be trying to do their job because they understand customers and their needs and requirements and the type of information much better than comms people. I always remember I did a little bit of work with the council in West Yorkshire a couple of years back, and a member of the comms team, Vicky, she said, I spent a day working in customer services, and she said, and it just opened my eyes to so much opportunity for me as a comms person, where we can help the customer services team. And it sounds so obvious to say, but you probably haven't had chance in the last 15 months. But as a comms person, have you spent a day with your customer service colleagues to see what inquiries are coming in? You know, be it on telephone or email or, you know, WhatsApp now. I think that's invaluable, you know, and that can really help inform well. You know, with Vicky, she said, well, it was around about school admissions time. And she said, I took a look at the school admissions page. It's the first time I've ever looked at it as a comms person. But if you're a parent whose kids are trying to get into school that year, that is the most important web page on the entire council website of probably 3,000 or 4,000 pages. She said it wasn't very well written. It wasn't very clear. I improved it. The following year, the number of inquiries fell, I forget the percentage, but by a significant amount, and that reduced the calls into the call centre. So there's a cost saving there as well for the team. And that was a really good, simple example for me of how comms and customer services should be working together to understand the problems, to improve the web pages, to get happier customers, because he wants to ring a contact centre. You know, I'll do anything to avoid that. So I think there's for me, even if it isn't wholly owned by comms, we are a massive stakeholder in it, and we should have a lot of say. And we certainly we should be in charge of how it looks and feels. But
Yeah,
my view of the world.
sounds like the dream world. And actually that was, and it might seem like a bit of a shameless plug here, but whatever, it's our comms corner. But this is why our CEO created our tool, because our tool effectively does the middle work between the customer service and the comms team. So through our tool, you're able to see, and you know, because it's on your website, that you're able to see whatever feedback comes in according to that page and any content gaps that are needing filling. So, and I completely agree. I feel like any silos that are within an organization just stop and everything from working as well as it could. and having the customer, just hearing the feedback from your own customers without having to call in, and wait an hour on the phone, is fantastic for comms, because you mitigate that, and actually customer service just loves the comms team afterward. We've seen it amongst our clients. It's just like the most wonderful thing. But yeah, it's super interesting.
Yeah, sorry, I think for me, so I know people hitting the Comms 2.0 website, number one kind of director of traffic, it's direct. People come direct because, within my tiny little corner of the world, Comms 2.0, hopefully touching wood, is quite well known now in our little niche. If you went off and talked to, I don't know, somebody working in, marketing in the financial sector, probably never heard of it. But if you're in public sector, not-for-profit comms, possibly have heard of it. So number one is direct traffic. Number two is Google. Number three is Twitter. Number four is LinkedIn. And number five is email. Those are the five biggest directors of traffic to the website. So I think, oh, that's good. I know all of that. But then what do people think when they get there? Obviously I get feedback and I talk to people, but I think when we first started chatting, I just suddenly realised that I don't really know enough about the experience of people once they hit the site, in terms of, did they find what they needed? There's 1,500 blog posts, case studies, resources on that website. It's a massive treasure trove of comms kind of insights. But what do people think? Did they find what they were after? So I think for me, 2021 was almost, okay, we need to, giving myself, my own advice, show a little bit of love to the website. So, okay, let's see what people think and where do I need to refresh and improve the website this year. So, I think that data is going to be really interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes on the dashboards. So I've got another set of dashboards to be a very sad man and stare at now.
Hopefully it will definitely be an easier dashboard to look at with reports and stuff, because anything that's like a difficult dashboard is just boring, really, isn't it? But that's super interesting, because Comms 2.0 gets 140k plus hits every single year now, and I think it's only going to go up and up and up. And like you said, you've been able to have your own little, you are your comms team within your website. And that's what I found very interesting amongst the comms people that I've spoken to, is sometimes they'll put out a great piece of content and have a content designer involved or the digital comms person involved, and then it's kind of like, that's it, like I put it out and that's it. But it's like, okay, what's next? Like, I understand that you're now working on the next interesting bit of content that you need to put out, or you're under so much undue stress that you now have to put out so much more. But what about, did that actually help them? I think that's a great question to ask. And Google Analytics does a great job at actually showing the quantitative aspect of it. How many people are hitting the page, how long are they staying, where are they coming in from, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't give you the quantitative stuff, the stuff that will tell you, has this person found what they're looking for? Has this person read something that enables them to go about their day and not call customer service? Has it aided your citizen? It's just super fascinating in that regard. So in terms of what advice would you give to any public sector comms person seeking to modernize or even measure their efforts, moving away from vanity metrics in terms of saying to your boss, oh, our bounce rate is so high on this page, it's doing great, when actually it might just be the fact that they're just not finding what they're looking for. So what would your advice be for people who are trying to modernize their efforts, move away from vanity metrics and reach digital maturity?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? Quite a hard one. I should have had that third cup of coffee after all. I think there's a few things there, isn't it? I suppose first off, I quite like a little bit of vanity metrics, because I know it's, going against what I said earlier. I think vanity metrics, they can give you an indication quite early on. If you started a campaign that's running for, I don't know, a month, they can give you an indication quite early on if something's working or not, and allow you to tweak it, you know. So if we're running something on Twitter or LinkedIn, or you can go in and we can have a look at the data almost kind of real time and see what's working and what isn't. We can look at the web traffic and, you know, we can get an indication, can't we, how we think something's going. But yeah, beyond that, it is very much back to, you know, I'm a stuck record on having a really great comms strategy with smart objectives, and then prioritising and looking at the objectives and agreeing with our kind of stakeholders and management teams about which bits we can deliver. And I think I kind of feel like I almost don't feel in a position to be able to advise anybody in public sector comms these days, because the last 15 months they've just had, how would any of us have coped and got through? Do you know what I mean? I'm just full of admiration and kind of love for the job they've done over the past 15 months. And I've worked with a lot of them. I've supported some of them. I've, you know, watched from the sidelines and seen them do an amazing job during COVID and beyond. So less about advice and more about, for me, I think my worry is now that, and I'm hearing this, I heard this from a senior comms director last week, that it's almost like, yeah, we've done well with COVID, right? Now that's sorted, which of course it isn't. We're living with COVID now for forever, I don't know, but certainly for the foreseeable. There's almost that dangerous point now where it's, right, now we need to do all the stuff that we haven't done in the past 15 months. And it's almost like the floodgates have been opened, and that kind of sidewash of comms demand is going to come in and hit teams that frankly are quite fragile. Because you'll know this yourself, you know, I mean, did your hours go up last year during COVID? You're probably working remotely, and, you know, did you see your hours go up? And, you know, I think for all of us, we've been battling that, haven't we? So I think for me, it's back to the fundamentals of, do we need to refresh the comms strategy? Do we need to have those serious conversations with, you know, the internal audience and the management team? What are our top 5 or 6 priorities for the next 3 months, next 6 months? I don't even think, you know, back in the day, I don't know how you were, but you'd probably write 3-year comms strategies. I mean, that's for the birds now, isn't it? Anyone writing a 3-year comms strategy now, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing next week anymore. Do you know what I mean? Never mind 3 years down the track. And I think, so COVID's been really interesting. I was talking to Ross Wigham, he's Director of Comms up at Northumberland NHS Trust, and he's a very experienced ex-head of comms in local government as well. And Ross was saying now that they really review their comms strategy quarterly. You know, and they're saying, is this still the right thing to do? Because I think it's such shifting sands, isn't it? And I think that's really smart, because the danger is, yeah, we've kind of done the comms around COVID, and now it's very much everything else. Can you get on with everything? And my worry is for teams that they're going to get deluged. Talking of which, can you hear the hailstorm here at the moment?
I can, yes.
Crazy hailstorm that's just happened. So deluged is the word. So I think for me, it's back to the basics, and I think it's if you haven't got for 2021 a really slimmed down, refreshed comms strategy, very clear priority work, very smart objectives in there. I think that would be my number one recommendation to teams. And it's easy for us to say, isn't it? You know, sat here having a chat. It's much harder for teams in-house that are kind of being hit with all of that demand. But I think the teams have got to kick back and say, no, you know, we're already burnt out. We're already got, you know, in a place where 70-hour weeks working from home have become normal. We need to be really smart and savvy, and a little bit kind of kick back where needed and say, no, let's do 5 or 6 things really, really well. And let's not try and do 20. And I think for me in the public sector, I've had it myself, and I see it with the teams that I support now. That's what happens. It's always happened, and it probably always will. So I think it's not really advice, but my recommendation would be get that new, fresh strategy in a really, really good place and work out, and then do what Ross does, review it every 3 months and see if it's fit for purpose, and report it back monthly. to show people what you're doing. Because I know that you've been really busy, like this month already, but like, does your boss know? If you don't tell your boss how busy you've been, they won't know, will they? So for me, yeah, it's the planning, the smart objectives, the agreeing it, getting the management team to sign up in blood to what we're about to, and then objectives and priorities, new ones can land, but then we can have that kind of informed conversation about, okay, well, we either bring in some additional resource to help with this, or we need to refigure the priorities. What can we drop to do this?
Yeah.
They're quite hard conversations to have with senior people, aren't they?
They're very hard, very hard. And I think one thing, and having spoken to Ross Wiggum myself as well, because I interviewed him, I think like a couple of weeks ago, what the hard thing that comes out of it is trying to back up what you're saying without metrics. And what he does, and which I totally agree with you, he does extremely well, is the fact that he does a weekly dashboard as well as monthly and quarterly reporting to his stakeholders and the people within the organization that actually need it, and the senior team. Because he told me that they have 12,000 staff, and everyone has a chance to see how they're communicating, but also what their key measures are. And this is why he's in talks with us at React and Share, so hopefully use our software as well, because I think there's no fighting data. It just is what it is. And I think pairing that up with great, passionate teams who do great work is just like a win-win scenario, where they no longer take your personal word for it, for how you love your colleagues and love your team and love, you're super passionate, but actually the metrics state that as well. And I think it's super key. And do you feel like that's a part of, because I know as part of your recent report around digital maturity, do you feel like that's a part of it? And what are the barriers that public organizations could face when it comes to reaching it? Because you had mentioned about fragile teams as well. And what does it mean to be a fragile team, and how can a fragile team move past it to become a stronger one? And that was like 5 questions in one, sorry.
And you know that, my tiny brain can't cope with more than 2 questions. Yeah, there's a few things there. I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Maturity. So I Googled the definition of maturity, and it means full development. And actually, if you think about it, we're never going to hit full development with anything, are we? Because we can always improve, whether it's a website or our email marketing or our social outputs, we can always improve. And I think for a comms person, and again, this is a good thing, the job's never done. We'll never hit a day when there's nothing else left on the to-do list, will we? I've not had it in 25 years. And I used to fret about it. Because I'm a little bit sad and I want to get everything ticked off. In the end, I stopped doing to-do lists because they were just a reminder to me of my own personal failure about not delivering everything. And to-do lists make you feel bad. They're just a reminder of the things that you haven't done, rather than celebrating the things you have done. So, yeah, that hasn't answered any of your 5 questions, has it? Sorry.
That hasn't, but it's pretty great. And yeah, I think I'm the same with to-do lists as well. And I think that was a very good point, because yes, it will never be done, but also that makes communications teams super key, regardless if the budgets are being cut at the minute. I just see it always going up over time, like as an average. So yeah, what do you? I'm trying to think of a question that you will answer.
What were the other 5 questions that I didn't answer? Maturity, barriers, wasn't it? Barriers to maturity. I think,
yeah,
obviously budget is one. And I think what you've seen, and again, over the past 15 months, it's a real mixed bag, isn't it? Even within sectors, even within geographic areas in a specific sector, I know of, council comms teams or NHS trusts or emergency services teams that can be a fairly similar sized organisation, but have a very different comms and marketing resource, be it budget or headcount. it really does differ a lot. You know, even if you look at, I don't know, was there 33 councils in London, they're largely similar sizes in terms of population. Some of them have got much, much bigger comms teams than others. So, you know, and that's a good thing, by the way. I think we should have as many comms and PR and marketing people as possible, because I think it's the most important part of the organisation, but I wouldn't I? But I think, yeah, so I think we've got this almost this landscape now of, on many levels, the haves and the have-nots. So we've got some teams are really scraping the barrel and they're making do with just free tools, and, you know, they're begging and borrowing wherever they can, and they're using, you know, kind of homemade kind of Excel sheets to do things, or they're using free versions of tools. Others, I know they've really invested, and they've had a little bit of extra budget last year, and they've invested. And I think, I would say this, wouldn't I? But do you think we should invest in the tools that can make our job easier, but not just easier, to give us the best possible chance of success? Because what's the stat? I think this came from Ofcom, that each day we're each bombarded with over 10,000 messages a day, whether that's web or social or email or TV, print, radio, podcasts. 10,000. So the chances of our messages kind of getting through and having some traction, they're quite small for all of us, aren't they? And we're going to have to work really, really hard to stand out in that really cluttered, noisy marketplace. But I think having the tools to help and having the data to inform, it has to give us a better shot of success, doesn't it? So, you know, I always want comms teams to have the biggest budget possible. You know, and if we don't need it all and we can hand some back at the end of the year, great. But, you know, comms teams going into bat with zero budget, they're really up against it, because sometimes you will need to pay for some advertising, or you will pay for a subscription to a tool that helps you, you know, or you will bring in a temp to help you for 3 months because you can't keep doing 70-hour weeks. Comms teams need budget. And I think, you know, it's been good to see that, you know, I think comms teams, particularly around local government and NHS, I think many of them did get an increase in budget during COVID. Not all, but a lot did. And I think that was good to see. So fingers crossed that remains. But I think other things, you know, like job traffic on the jobs pages on Comms 2.0 is up massively. And I think there's a lot of people recruiting. There's a lot of competition for the best people. And there's a lot of people kind of coming to the end of, well, this 15-month period and thinking, okay, I've just really sharpened my toolbox of comms skills. I now, if you've just done a 15-month in-house stint of COVID and everything else, you know, and you've done everything from social media to email marketing to, you know, and everything in between, you're probably in a really good place to go and land a new role, because you can, if you can cope with COVID as a comms person, you can cope with anything. So I think there's a lot of people thinking about, okay, next steps, making a move. So I think, yeah, those teams and those organisations that have got the extra budget and are recruiting, they're going to be picking up some of the best people. And I think, I suppose that coupled with, and I don't know if we're going to talk about this or not, but, you know, flexibility of work, you know, we've just all pretty much, you know, unless you're frontline, we've all just spent 15 months working from home, haven't we? And there are pros and cons of that, but we've just proven we can work from home. And, you know, a lot of us are going to want to carry on some of that, not maybe 5 days a week, but certainly for a good chunk of the week. And so I think, so it's not just about the budget, it's about the mentality of those organisations with the budget to recruit. Is, are they looking at proper agile working, you know, beyond the June restrictions kicking in or loosening rather? So I think it's a really, really interesting time to be a comms person, because I think there's a lot of change, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of jobs out there, and there's a lot of people thinking, I'm pretty good at comms. I've just done COVID for 15 months. What shall I do next? I'm going to push myself and try and get the next rung of the ladder. So So I probably still haven't answered any of those 5 questions, have I? But
no, you have. You have. Finally, we got there. But no, that's like, I have seen your jobs page on Comms 2.0 website. It is off the hook. Like you were uploading maybe like 5 to 10 a day at some point, and I was like, holy crap! There are loads of public sector organizations actively hiring comms people now. So let me give you a hypothetical scenario. Let's say a comms person who's watching this has just been given a higher budget, and obviously wants to see an ROI on that. So what metrics should they be focusing on?
Oh, it's a good one, isn't it? I mean, for me, as you said, I quite like a little bit of vanity metrics just for me to just guide me a little bit as to is something working or not. It has to all be about the outcomes, doesn't it? So if you look at that example about Vicky in the council in West Yorkshire, she spent the day with the customer services team. There's a problem. We've got a bunch of unhappy parents who can't get the information they need on the school admissions page. Let's sort it out. And then the following year when it happened, a massive reduction in calls and complaints to the contact centre. So the outcome was that, you've got, happier parents who've got the information they needed from the web page. You've got happier customer services staff because, they've got fewer calls coming in. You've got a saving to the council in terms of, reduced call volumes, probably needed a smaller team the next year to deal with that. So I think almost like the action there was our web page was a bit rubbish. So we've just improved it. We've listened to the customer. We've improved it, and the outcomes then there's 3 or 4, isn't there? So I think for me, it's all about the outcomes. I think the danger is that we still get a lot of tactical requests from teams, from management teams, from internal stakeholders about we need a video, we need a Facebook page, we need we need Clubhouse. That was the next one that landed, wasn't it, a couple of months ago? And we've just got to stop that. We've just got to stop it. There are still people asking for branded merchandise. Hey Hyatt, could we have some new branded pens and pencils? For what? This is like 1970s marketing. This should stop. I don't know anyone that hasn't got a pen. Do you know what I mean? Should we be spending our money on pens? No. So for me, it's about the outcomes. But I think the challenge for a lot of us is going back and, obviously I'll die in a ditch over comms teams and defend them and fly a flag for them. But other teams have had a really tough 15 months as well. And so I think the danger is that you're going to have a lot of pressure on other teams to now start delivering their big priority work pieces. And do they have the robust business plan behind them that they can share with the comms team? So if somebody comes to me and says, we need a comms plan around, reducing emissions charges in the city. Okay, let's talk about it. What research have you got? Where's your business plan to show us what are the objectives over the next 5 years to help reduce it? Very often those business plans don't exist. And this is a real problem. It's always been a thing in comms. I don't know if you've experienced this, but my worry is that this is going to be an even bigger problem right now because those other teams have also been really busy. And have they done their fundamentals? Have they got their up-to-date business plan for 2021 that explains really clearly how they're going to reduce those emissions over the next 5 years and from X to Y by doing Z? And then as a comms person, you can start to unpick it and work with them and collaborate, can't you? And say, okay, how about we try this? But without that initial fundamental business plan existing in the first place, we are, flying in the wind, to use that phrase, aren't we? And I think that's a massive challenge. And I'm seeing it, a bit of it with some of the people that I mentor, that those initial business plans don't exist. So the comms plan is always going to be a little bit guesswork, because it's kind of built on a house of cards, isn't it? So I think there's something about the comms people kicking back saying, well, maybe we can help you with the business plan, but that's your plan. You need to do that bit. And then we'll support with the comms. So again, probably still haven't answered your questions, but that's just in my head as I think that's a real risk. So I think, What was the question again?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It was all around, you know, metrics that they should be using. But you speak about fundamentals like that. I think that's a great point on the topic of fundamentals. Like, what else would you deem an absolute fundamental for a comms team to put into place alongside a business plan?
Yeah, I think for me, it's, you know, you want, I suppose there's a few things, isn't there? You do need the resources, and I think, you know, some teams have got that. You need the clear objectives. You need smart objectives that you're working from, and clear priorities agreed by everybody, and then they don't get changed. You know, we've got a priority and an agreed plan today, then it gets changed tomorrow. We can't keep working like that. So we need some agreement on what we will use our time and our resources for. I think for me, it's back to having a really smart comm strategy with, you know, the smart objectives. You know, this isn't new. Everybody knows this, but it can get lost in the wash sometimes, can't it? I think the crucial bit for me within all of that then, though, is, and this is, I think, something that's possibly suffered a bit again in the past 15 months, is, but, you know, yes, we need the insight. Yes, we need the agreed priorities, but where's the room to be creative and to innovate? And I think that's where we might need to work a little bit harder, because for me, the best comms teams are the ones that have managed to carve out some time and space to be creative. You know, so I set up creativity labs last month, and I think you came to the first one, didn't you? With Doncaster Council, you know, and the work that they do, you know, and, you know, my love for them is well known. I think they do amazing work, but what they do is they carve out time to give themselves a chance to be creative. They haven't got a bigger team than the next council down the road. Do you know what I mean? But the way they use their resources is really interesting, and they give themselves a chance to be creative. We're all creative in different ways, aren't we? Every team has got creativity and the ability to do great work, but you've got to give yourself the headroom and the space. And where that might be 20 minutes a day, just to have a doodle and have a think about something. That for me is the differentiator between the really good team and the great team, and it's finding that little bit of space. So the next creativity lab, actually, we've got 3 external kind of advertising, branding and creative agencies on the panel. So, because I'm really keen to understand, I mean, I know a little bit because I'm friends with some of them, but to understand, well, how do they do it? How do, as a creative agency, the pressure on you to be creative every day is huge, isn't it? And they're just human beings, the same as me and you, with a big to-do list and lots of emails and meetings and video calls. How do they do it? How do they stay creative? So I think within all of that, you know, the tools and the platforms and the data and the insight and the clear priorities, the smart objectives and the really great comms plan, that all of that's great, but you just need that little bit of creativity. And I love the story. I blogged about this once, but because insight's great, isn't it? But it's insight plus creativity for me. Back in the day, there used to be this argument about comms, about, are we artists or are we scientists? And some people said, we're artists. Some said, we're scientists. For me, it was always both. I think you need both, and it might not be you personally, but within a team, you do need the scientists that get the data and can inform our work, but you also need the left field stuff, the stuff that maybe didn't come from insight. It's just an idea that you try, you know. And I think it was, this is a random story, but I wrote a blog post about Sir Alec Izagonis, and he was the creator of the Mini in the 1950s. You know, this tiny little car with 4 wheels in each corner that actually changed kind of the motor industry, and it sold, I think over 5 million vehicles were sold. There wasn't any research or focus group that said what the world wants right now is a really tiny car that you're going to struggle to get into. But it worked, and it had a personality, and it had a brilliant story behind it, and it just took off, and it became much copied. So for me, it's about, yeah, you need the insight and the plan and the outcomes to be known, but that little bit of space to be creative as well. And I think, you know, you want to go home on a Friday or close up on a Friday these days, but like you've done something a bit different and creative, don't you? For all of us, we want that. And I think comms and marketing people, I think we're naturally, instinctively a little bit show-offy, and we want to create stuff, don't we? And I think that, for me, that's the differentiator.
Yeah, completely agree. Making time to think and be creative is absolutely key to having a difference, but also for your own personal branding. But also, on top of that, I like to make time for those questions that we mentioned earlier from the people who are external or like out of our department, who are like, hey, would you mind whipping up that quick thing? I love making time for that, a little bit of buffer. But I think it's been super. Before I move on to our very final question, this is why I want to speak to you, Darren, because you've gone from in-house comms to now consulting for comms and training them up and helping organizations of all different sizes and breadths. And I think there's no other person like you who has done that within the Comms UK community. And I think you've done an amazing job, and we've learned so much. And I've personally learned so much over our millions of chats over the last few months as well. So finally, looking into your crystal ball, Darren, what would you think will be the next big thing in the public sector comms arena? And it can be anything.
Wow. Thank you for those kind words, by the way. The check's in the post, as they say. I did have a think about this, and I jotted down 6 real quickies. Platforms and channels, you know, it's back to that. Let's innovate. Let's try new things. Let's have a look at Clubhouse. Let's have a look at Twitter Spaces. But let's also be mindful that they come and go. Own your own platforms. That's just a given. 2 is you still need a really smart comms strategy, and have the best comms strategy you can possibly have. You know, get all the team involved and others, you know, as many as you can involved in creating that really great comms strategy. I think 3 was around, I think there's going to be more collaboration. We need to collaborate more, and we've seen, you know, the way comms teams have worked through COVID, where it was government comms people and NHS, local government and others. I think that collaboration, you know, it doesn't always happen easily. It doesn't always sit well, but we need to collaborate. And I think that's going to be really important. 4 was about trust. And I think we've got an issue there, because both globally and, you know, nationally, if you look at all the Edelman Trust Barometer stuff, trust in the media is down, trust in government is down, trust in leaders is down. Actually, trust locally is up. So we tend to trust the things we see and know locally. But I think the trust in media and government falling presents a problem to many of us in public sector comms. So how do we counter that? So I think that's a biggie. 5 was, well, another 10 years of comms 2.0. So I can see that as a thing. So I want to still be around in 10 years' time doing the same stuff and different stuff. And I think finally, I've got this on my kitchen wall. Final. Work hard and be nice to people. We had this chat, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, and someone that I mentor said, why is it all the senior people are horrible? And that's not true, by the way. Not all of them are. But there is somehow a weird kind of belief that you have to be a bit nasty to get on. I've never believed that. I don't accept it. I know tons of brilliant senior comms people who are lovely. So I think for me, work hard and be nice to people. That is my next big thing. And you know, the world would be a better place if everybody adopted that approach.
That's so true. Darren Caveney, thank you so much for joining me on Comms Corner.
Thanks so much for the invite. And that sounded really preachy at the end, didn't it? So
I just had to jump in as well and say thank you so much, Darren, for joining us. It's been a joy to learn more from you, and also here's to 10 more years of Comms Corner and your amazing work. Darren, if any of our viewers want to find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the website is comms2.0.co.uk. Go and have a look at 1,500 blog posts, case studies, and free resources. Twitter is the social media account for Comms 2.0, so it's at Comms 2.0. So I know there's 16,500 Twitter followers on there. And LinkedIn, check me out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's brilliant, and I never understand why some comms people are so sniffy about it. I know it had a bad rep back in the day, and it was very bland back in the day. LinkedIn's brilliant for me. I get work through LinkedIn, and I've met and connected with people on LinkedIn. So, that would be my final thing. Get yourselves on LinkedIn, and let's make sure we're all connected and learning from each other on LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Darren. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Please keep your eyes peeled for more episodes of our Comms Corner series, and head to reactandshare.com to gain more insights and tips for all of the amazing communications teams out there. We are always on the lookout at React and Share for new ways to empower communications teams to succeed. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.